was and your responsibilities at work, basically, and how long you worked there, and what years you started.
Okay. My name is Greg Szurnicki, and I began work here on January 17, 1955. And my duties then was as an attendant in the beginning years, and later became a mental health therapy aide, and finally I branched off into joint labor committees of New York State. But here's where it all began, and if we think back, there is a pattern to our lives, as one philosopher said, and it all began here for me in the second phase of my life. And there was 3 courses that I pursued, and one was being an advocate for mental health patients, 2, labor, and 3, civic activists. But here when I began was 3 weeks of orientation and training, and that was more of an orientation than a training. It was people who were disabled, disabilities. There were episodes of violent wards and how to treat patients who were disturbed. And then finally here was where I got my real training. And the real training here was under a man called John Szurnicki, who was really my mentor in the afternoon. As you can see, on the top floor was my ward, Ward 65. It had 85 patients. Beds were only 4 inches apart. Mixed diagnosis and psychosis. The only medication of any consequence was sodium amytal and Dilantin for those who had epilepsy. And if the man on Ward 65 in this wing called in sick, you had 170 patients, which you fed in a dining room in Group 1, where a building used to stand there, female service. And there they fed 1,000 patients, 500 female, 500 male. It was here in the late 56, the year of late 56, at the beginning of 57, where the whole concept of mental health treatment began to go on a different course. This was the state-of-the-art in treatment for the mentally ill. It is where you brought your parents that you can no longer take care of. It was where you took most of society's problems and put them in these institutions. And it was here that you warehoused them literally. And it was the beginning of that threshold that said, we have to do something more than just warehousing them. And it began with a drug called Thorazine, or its derivative, which was valvulva, which was discovered for constant hiccuping, and it relaxed the diaphragm and permitted you to relax. But it had great difficulties and side effects in the beginning. Initially, they did not know how to titrate or measure its dosage for each individual. When they did find that, it took about 2 years to discover that. People with clear blue skin would turn blue, white skin would turn blue, rashes would break out from head to foot, rigidity would set in, and sleeping continually, growing obese. All of these were side effects, but when they learned to refine these psychotropic drugs and begin to discover new and better ones, value and others that were more exotic, then we began to take those patients who were warehoused, permit them to walk on the boulevard, remembering that we warehoused them on wards that sometimes they never got off. So this permitted them to be outside, self-sustaining, and stabilized. And from that developed, from the old medical model, it became a model administratively where we began to think of return to the communities. And from this building, which housed 500 patients, with 1 doctor and 1 nurse, supervising nurse, and then the staff attendants who were charges of the ward and took care of the patients on a daily basis. We were their families. We were the only contact they had with the outside world. were the only ones that brought them and shared what little we had with them. They smoked tremendous toilet paper cigarettes made of Cayuga tobacco, which was made in the prisons. And the smell and the toll on their health was unbelievable. So we used to buy them bugler and buy a rolling cigarette machine, which will ease that a little bit. We were their friends, their family, but we always had to be firm and consistent. You could not get too close because then you became involved with them. And then when they lost or died or went away, those were traumatic little events. So we learned to be firm and consistent in caring and sharing. And it was that how they survived. When you think that years ago, when you went by and all of these porches that now have screens on would be filled with patients screaming and yelling in all bizarre manners and vocalizations. And my first impression when I came there before I was hired, I said, how could anybody house people like they do in the zoo? But I was fortunate to be on that threshold of change that changed it from the warehousing or the custodial model again until the community-oriented program and treatment. And it all began with the drug Thorazine and a whole mental outlook on how we should treat mental patients. The advent 10 years later of the nursing homes, we emptied out the institution at that time in 55. There was almost 10,000 patients. There were 35,000 patients totally in Long Island, beginning with Kings Park, Pilgrim State, and Central Islip. We reduced the population 50% when the nursing homes began to accept our elderly. Remember, the elderly, there's no place to bring them. No one had the money to sustain them or keep them. And so they ended up as a social problem in the warehoused institutions. And this was the first drastic reduction of our population to 50% in 1968-9. And from then on it grew to a state where every hospital had to have a psychiatric ward of at least 20 beds. And the idea here was to return them to the catchment area of the city or town or state where they became ill and return them back to that home base again. And today that is the method of treatment, community placement homes. Office of Mental Retardation has perfected this to a fine art with the disability homes for their patients. So they emptied out what was once a horror, Willowbrook Developmental Center. So we've reached a whole new course and attitude on the treatment of mentally ill that is more acceptable today than it was in 1955, where you hid all of those histories in the closet.
That was amazing.
Okay?
All right, go for it.
All employees always begin on the evening shift. The evening shift hours were from 2:30 to 11 o'clock. Night shift was 7 to 2:30, and then 2:30 to 11 o'clock. So that's how you work through the shifts. When I arrived here at 2:30, first thing I did was sign in, because sometimes you would be assigned to a different ward for whatever the reason might be. I would go to my ward, which was Ward 65. I would count all the patients. I would ask for a report on what occurred during that particular day, and who we had to observe more carefully than another, or who was looked at the brink of being ill. All of that would be for their welfare. I would look through the program notes and the clinical notes to see if anything occurred that I wasn't aware of since that day shift closed. Once I counted the patients, I would sign the book. I would look into the hours of what medication had to be dispensed, at what hours and to whom. Once that was done, supper time is at 4 o'clock at that time. You would take the patients out to eat. The building 1, which is 1,000 patients feeding at one time, which is an unbelievable experience. And then they would come back, give medication if necessary, afterwards for those who required it, and then the rest they would sit down and relax, watch TV, talk with them, We'd play games with them, cards or checkers or chess, anything, because there were no programs. So we were it. We were family, friends, programmers, and confidants. And it was an experience that you were very used to. And you were very sympathetic to them. No matter how they talked, what they said, or whether it was a believer or not, you were listening to them. And they were lonely, very much lonely and afraid, many of them. So that was the bulk of your evening. Then, prior to your change of shift, you would again count all the patients, see that all those who were in bed were in bed, go and check the whole ward out so that there were no surprises, all right? Because those windows had dared eyes on them and shelves that you could commit suicide on. So you had to be careful for those who are on the suicide watch. And that got to be an instinct there. You could tell when you come in the ward, the tone of the ward, whether there would be a problem or whether it would be a quiet evening. And that's sort of you developed through experience. And then the shift was ended, we went with the relief. We brought in up anything that was any consequences during the shift, who to watch, who to observe, count the patients together, we would sign the book, and you were relieved. So basically, in the evening shift, that was the bulk of your duties. There were occurrences where things happened on another ward, where a disturbed patient, it became a problem, and the only way of communicating them very quickly was to hit the radiator with your keys. They were uncovered at that time. So this side of the building would come down and enter the door from that end, and then from the north end we would come down and enter the ward that end. And usually when you saw 5 or 6 attendants coming from both sides, the disturbed man, no matter how ill he was, usually quieted down. So that was for anything that was the disturbing. If there were times when you had to restrain him, that required a doctor order, and there was a whole method of doing this, and a whole method of observation and care. You had to watch them very carefully. They didn't dehydrate or they didn't hurt themselves in any way. So that's what you would pass on to the next shift if he remained in restraint. You could say, watch John Jones very carefully. He's fighting his restraint. Make sure he has water, cool his brow, and make sure that he doesn't dehydrate. And so basically that was the norm for an evening's work and routine. Episodes of the disturbance were 5% of all the incidents that occurred outside of injuries sustained by falling or slipping on a slippery floor or down the stairs or whatever that might be. All normal illnesses. In the daytime it was different. They went to clinics. They were examined by doctors. X-rays were taken. A whole routine set up. Interviews with doctors. The one doctor on the first floor of this place would interview the patients, especially the alcoholics. We had a specialty for them. Because alcoholism in the beginning was not recognized as an illness, so you couldn't admit them. So another threshold that was crossed was they cleaned up the bowel and they gave early alcoholics a psychosis. Psychosis due to alcoholic deterioration. And they were like extra help for us when they came in. In the spring they would go out, work at the Concord and the Borscht Belt, come back in September, and they were like extra employees. Saved us from injury and the patients from injury many times as extra help. The problem was when they came back, they had episodes of delirium tremens, which you had to nurse for a week to get them back out of it. But they were very good. Very intelligent, very hard workers. And sometimes you'd say to yourself, why? You know why? But even then, as we progressed to 1969, I remember having worked in that large building over there in 21 where we had Alcoholics Anonymous sessions for the patients. So programs were fully developed, more intense and more sophisticated. Okay, so here was the threshold, a change for many things. Again, like I said, change for the patient, change for the employees, and change for the hamlet itself, civically, all right? And basically, that was the routine of the day.
Could you describe for me, what sort of things like a patient had? Like, were they allowed to have personal items, and like, did they keep their rooms, or was it like a dormitory setting?
It was all institutions have two wings. All right? For example, this wing in the center was the day room, and the one on the far side was the dormitory. In between was a bathroom, a treatment room, a shower room, and they kept most everything they could except sharp instruments. They ate with knives and forks. Okay, unless they were told not to. Okay, so that was part of the clinical notes. That was part of the passing on of whatever had to be passed on from shift to shift. But as a rule, we even changed our dress. Can you imagine when I began, they wanted me to wear a black pair of pants and shoes, white shirt, black tie, and a coat that looked like a prison warden with a cap. So we refused it. That was our first rebellion, right? And what we ended up with a tie, white shirt, black pants, and black shoes. And what that did was, you learned very quickly is that, hey, you became more human rather than something that was in a guardian kind of a setting. And you learned to wear very early breakaway ties. Because if you got into an episode with a disturbed patient, you could take your tie and choke you. You'd have to cut it with a razor blade. Someone get you out, you could stray along it. But those were little incidentals that came through. You learn how to restrict them.
Good, how are you?
You want to talk to him?
No, it's okay.
So anyway, that was part of the training sessions I went through. As far as anything that they could keep, they kept that was not harmful to themselves and others, all right? Not a jackknife, for example, or things like that. But basic eating utensils they could have and use. And we scoured the dormitories and the day rooms regularly, and we went through the shifts, okay?
Well, you got a good man there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a great.
And then Kenny worked here in this building too. Ken Gantana. I worked in a lot of buildings. A lot of buildings.
Okay, let me finish here.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
So finally, one of the next major steps in humanizing the patient as a patient, a client, they even changed the words client, now it's consumer. And what we did was that we did away with any kind of a dress that looked uniform. And we began with casual dress and regular ordinary street dress so that the patient felt he was in a more human kind of environment. So all this was that triad of progression through the hospital system. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Can I... From when it began in 1950 and when it ended in October 27, 1997, it was more of an adult home setting to where they were supported by the state, by the people who looked after them and cared for them, deeply involved in programs. You just didn't sit at the ward and idle all day long. You were out in activities. You were given honor passes where you could go from this building to town, stay the whole day in town, come back, go to bed, sign in. So it's more like a setting of a hotel or a motel, except that it was a supervised setting, which today is the state of the art. The two white buildings and the entrance are supportive care centers for adults. They live in there like it was a hotel rental room. They rented their rooms, they sit in there, they eat together, they socialize together, they have advisory committees together. They're part of the whole system now, where they were the patient instead of the consumer. Okay, so that's how mental health has changed. And one of the most drastic changes was, and we always have to owe ourselves to that, is that every hospital had to have a psychiatric ward. So you could go in there with an episode and conceivably come right back home after you were stabilized. Whereas once you entered with here, you were good for 6 months, minimum. So that's the difference. Now you're treated like any other illness if you have an episode. No different than getting your wrist cut or your finger infected or your leg infected, whatever it might be. You go in, you're stabilized, restore the health, and you're back where you came from.
We went through the ward and we separated the profoundly retarded people from every different classification, and we sent them to a home to help retarded people, not in with psychiatric patients. And that improved the whole ward setting. It improved it for the staff, but most of all, improved it for the patients. And really, you can't imagine what a change that made for everybody. And that was a big step that I can remember of things that happened. And everything that Greg has said is true. The staff works much more with the patients. I think initially the staff didn't work that much with patients as far as rehabilitation went, because they were in an impossible setting, a setting where you almost couldn't work with the patients, mainly because there were no tranquilizers to control the patients. So you really were doing custodial care, and you were trying to be as kind as you could, within that setting. So it was difficult.
Could you give me your name and how long you worked here and when you started?
My name is Ken Garatano, and I worked 13 years. I retired in 91.
Thanks.
The system was the Willowbrook consent decree,
Right.
where the relatives of the developmentally disabled went to court and they got a Willowbrook consent decree rather than go to a court where you'd have a regular jury hearing. And from then on, and we took it off as a union to make sure the ratio to patient was not 85-1 like myself, but 22-1.
Well,
Then it was down to 11-1.
Right.
And on that we built, and this is where really care could be exercised, programs initiated, and treatment really progressed where you could see something occurring with the patient.
By the end, when I retired, patients' days were very busy with recreation, with therapy, doing some kind of work, amazing number of things that they did, and also with group sessions where they would meet with the psychologist or the social worker, and they would talk. It was just a completely different setting from the earlier days.
When I was working at Northeast Nassau, which is a smaller hospital over there, on a Sunday, we used to put all the patients, even those with wheelchairs, take them in a van and have the attendants take them to Captree or Jones's Beach. They laid on the beach, they walked around on the beach. It was a whole different setting. Mary Dorset would come over and give them a whole beautiful Sunday. So that was the difference from what was to what finally occurred.
Was it very crowded in there when you first worked? Like
Which
you said,
one?
there were 85 people in that ward?
Well, back in the 50s.
So the 50s you're talking, again, this was almost 10,000 patients here. 500 to this building alone, which was average for most of the
85
buildings.
to 91 ward.
Right. I had 85 patients. Beds were only 4 inches apart. And then you talk about perverseness, abuse, things that were not very pleasant for patients who were more regressive and non-aggressive. Well, really, they had to watch out for them so they weren't abused. And that was quite a job. You can't pack 85 people together.
Oh, I remember those
Space was very, very critical.
I remember those days.
I remember incidents would occur just if you stepped in my space. That's how precious it was. If you stepped close to me and was watching TV, there was an episode. He'd strike out and hit you, right? So you realize, and to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the same people mumbling, talking bizarrely, shouting, singing, the obsessive would stand on its feet for hour after hour at the TV. So, it was a setting that certainly was not treatment conducive, because whatever headway you made, in therapy was destroyed when they returned them back to the ward. And the shock treatment was 22 patients at a time in Ward 88. That is an experience that I never want to see again.
Me too.
What building was that?
That was in the building, no, it was 39. Q&N. That's a veterans group down by Upper Dock Road. We would take patients from here, and other wards would all congregate in Ward 88, and there would be 5 attendants, each one taking an ankle, each one taking an arm, and the one would put the catheters to the temples, and the doctor would determine what amperage should go through. That would then convulse him, and he would come out of that screaming, yelling, crying, and they'd throw him on the mattress, and then the next one was just like a assembly line. And this was the treatment. This was the state of the art at that time.
Did it here too, Greg?
Yeah, I know. But this was where they did it en masse, and that was very troubling. So that was the end of that kind of treatment. And it's only good after a while you learn only to the young to bring them back out of their regressiveness and then have intensive therapy. So insulin shock was another treatment modality. But in the end, psychotropic drugs and the sophisticated ones we have today are what emptied out those hospitals. Because it's a chemical imbalance, and stabilizing that imbalance permits them to be human beings again and not stigmatized.
If people just have small problems, they can be treated on the outside by a psychologist without medication. But when people have problems that are just consuming, literally, they really do.
And if you were sick,
I've seen that clearly.
and if you were not sick and were admitted to this hospital, within 6 months you were. Okay, really, that was a terrible thing to say.
Tardive dyskinesia, involuntary.
Do you remember the patient we had who was a former seminarian student? Father was a big shot in the income tax field. And for 3 years I fed him, almost forcibly. And he would stand for hours on one leg. Beautiful kid, right?
Catatonic.
And every time the father would come, I would say, "Come on, Joe, let's go downstairs. Father's waiting for you. Let's get dressed." Clear blue sky on a Sunday. He says, "Okay, Greg, I'll be dressed. I'll go down." And my mouth was hanging down by my knees, and shortly thereafter he went home with his father. But that was the first evidence I saw of a self-cure, or a return to reality without any warning.
But that's almost...
That's a rarity. That's a rarity, but it shocked me. I thought I had seen everything, and then to see him, because I had to sit him down, sometimes in restraint, because his ankles would swell unbelievable. He wouldn't sleep. And then I fed him, and he did it grudgingly, but he remembered everything I did. That was another fallacy we learned, is that no matter how ill the patient was and how bizarre he might be, he remembered everything you did. More importantly, he knew your weaknesses to a T. That was a revelation. And especially the paranoid, they knew just how to get your goat, they knew where your weaknesses were. Oh, don't get started, we'll go on and on and on.